Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's convention webinar series. Tonight, I'm joined by Brett Florens. Brett, I have you in the wings. Good evening. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for having me.
You're joining us from Amsterdam tonight.
Yes, at the moment I am in Amsterdam. I base myself between South Africa, Amsterdam, and London or the UK, depending on where the work is, you know.
Absolutely, that's great. So you're only, so it's not too bad. You're only an hour ahead of us. So,
Yes, but yeah, there are some faithful listeners that are tuned in from South Africa, so they're 2 hours ahead of you. So
all right, excellent. Well,
hopefully they would have. Yeah.
I also know we have some listeners from the US on with us tonight as well, Brett. So I think it's first thing in the morning for them over there. So,
Yeah.
so we've got them all around the world. So it's great to have you with us. So Brett,
Thank you.
before I hand you the screen, because I know we've got a jam-packed presentation tonight, tell us a little bit about you as a photographer, your sort of history. I will hand you the screen because I know you've got some slides that back this up. So just tell us a little bit about you as a photographer, for people who aren't familiar with you, and then we'll get into the passion and profit tonight.
Thanks, Jay. Well, my journey to becoming a professional photographer is not really your typically conventional story. Although I have heard from other photographers who have a similar story, you know, starting off in the military during the apartheid era, 1990. I went into the police force through conscription, and found myself following politically motivated activity. You know, the change from apartheid to democracy was obviously a huge event in South Africa's history, and being a policeman at that time was, looking back on it now, an incredible privilege to be part of that really sort of deep history. Basically what happened was I was 19 years old, and in the police force, as I said, and here's a slide of me on the back of an armored vehicle, what you'd call a Casper, patrolling the townships in the 90s. Literally there was so much violence and mayhem going on in the country with the political turmoil and the political landscape that there was too much work for the forensic photographers, and the townships were a really dangerous place to be in. So they decided to open a photographic unit within the riot unit, and to you know, cut a very long story short, I volunteered to be a photographer, having had no sort of creative inclination whatsoever. It was just something different to do as opposed to patrolling in the townships. And basically I found myself in the thick of incredibly newsworthy stories, and I started selling images to the press, and started making a little bit of a sideline business out of photojournalistic images. One of the images that I actually won an award for was this image over here, where one of the policemen was cutting open the false bottom of a lorry. In South Africa we call it a bakkie, which is basically a utility vehicle, a delivery vehicle. Underneath there you can see 177 AK-47s, and there were around 2,000 rounds that were discovered within, you know, underneath the false bottom. So I was shooting images like this. I do have a couple of images coming up that are pretty gory. So if you're not into blood, please just close your eyes for a couple of minutes. I will let you know when the good stuff's back on. But yeah, so the next image is of a dead person, but it's not, you know, there's not too much blood. This image was my first front cover of a national newspaper. It's a very, very sad story. This young policeman had gone to police college, and he was on duty for 15 minutes. It was his very first day on the job, having gone to police college for 6 months, sort of come back to where he was posted, and booked on duty at 6:30 a.m. and at 6:45 he was shot in an armed robbery in in Umbilo Road in Durban, and yeah, terrible story. 15 minutes on duty, and it was my first front cover. So that, having my work published and getting affirmation about my photographic ability sort of prompted me to take it a little bit more seriously, and I realized that I could earn some money from selling newsworthy images. The next two images are really there's a lot of blood involved, and there's children involved too. So if you don't want to see any blood and guts, please don't look at these next two images. This was a massacre in an area called Kwamakuta. You can see, I mean, it's just absolutely harrowing images. Children, that little girl is burnt as well, if you can see on her leg. So it was my duty to record photographically for evidential purposes these types of scenes. The next shot over here, you can see as well, there's a little kid under the blankets, mom on the bed having been shot, and then the dad lying on the floor. That's enough blood and guts. So if you did turn away, then you're more than welcome to look back again. So basically, what happened was, and I think this happens a lot when in your social circles you're the guy who takes pretty decent images. I was asked by friends and family and colleagues to photograph their weddings, because weddings is quite a common way for people to enter into the market. So this is the very first wedding I shot for a client that wasn't friends or family, somebody that was actually paying me. And I can totally understand how people with a passion for photography end up shooting for friends and family to start off with. Looking back on my career now, and I mean my career is 23 years old, looking back on my career now, and I'll talk to you a little bit later on about that, shooting for friends and family might not necessarily be the right way to get into photography as a career, specifically because of setting precedents, but we'll chat about that a little bit later. So from there, I pretty much realized that I didn't want to be a policeman for the rest of my life, and I had used all the money that I had sold, that I had gained from selling images to the newspapers and to news agencies. I'd used all that money to buy my camera gear and to upgrade my camera gear. So I decided that I needed to try and move into shooting more domestic work and shooting images that were a lot happier. Also, after 1994, newsworthy images were not selling, specifically from South Africa. I mean, I remember on Christmas Day in 1995, I was at a scene where there were 22 people killed in one household, and that's a pretty big story, I think. 22 people killed, one household, Christmas Day, and Reuters, Associated Press, Newsweek, AFP, none of them said it was a big enough story to print. I ended up selling it to a local newspaper, ended up on page 3, an incredible image with a helicopter with a cargo net full of sort of just bodies that were being airlifted out of the homestead, and literally selling it for less than £10. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So I realized that I couldn't make money like that anymore, and I wanted to move more into photographing weddings and families and portraits and events and that type of photography. From the wedding side of things, basically I took 6 months leave, which was due to me, and set up my studio in a suburban area, put an A-framed sign outside of the studio saying Brett Florens Photography, my phone number, and pretty much I waited for the phone to ring. I would do anything and everything. So I did a lot of headshots for estate agents, and one of the estate agents that came in his wife worked at a surfwear brand. I ended up shooting for them, and that led me on to photographing catalogs for Roxy, for Quicksilver, and and then the funny thing happened, which I thought was pretty cool, was because I was shooting swimwear, an underwear brand started asking questions. You know, you're the guy that shoots swimwear, right? And I was like, yeah, that's me. I shoot swimwear. So they asked if I'd like to shoot underwear catalog. So I said yes, obviously, and I started shooting for Wonderbra, and that was a really nice job to have, and that led on to other brands as well. Kangol, here are some more Wonderbra images, and gathering momentum and gathering sort of legitimacy. I started shooting for other brands, Under Armour, Puma, Salomon, DC, and I started shooting a lot of catalog work. I was very fortunate that Nikon picked up on my work, and in 2008 I became a Nikon ambassador, and I'm very involved with Nikon at the moment, doing work for them in Dubai, in Germany, in the Netherlands, and obviously in South Africa as well, which I'm very passionate about. They use my work in their advertising. At the moment I've got a couple of YouTube videos out speaking about shooting urban photography, but pretty much that is the story of how I started. So I hope that wasn't too long for you, Jay.
No, that was great, mate. Well, you've told them everything they need to know now, so so we can crack on with passion to profit. So
here we go, guys. Let's talk about the challenges that face new photographers entering into the market, because you know, listening to me right now, by virtue of the fact that you're prepared to give up an hour and a half or 2 hours of your time to listen to me speak, means that you're serious about making the change or making the transition from a passion into making some sort of financial reward for the work that you're doing. Maybe your long-term goal is to be a full-time photographer, or maybe your long-term goal is just to pay for the equipment that you have already invested in. Some of the stuff that I'm going to be chatting about you would have heard before if you've listened to me speak, but it is good to hear things a couple of times, just so hopefully it would sink in. So, you know, just to look at the industry at the moment, and to understand what's going on in the industry. And you know, I have a few sort of metaphors that I relate the industry to. One being the food industry, and then also the music industry. You know, because with the advent of digital, the market has become very, very competitive. You know, in the 90s and the 80s, there weren't as many photographers around as there are now. There are many reasons for that. One of the main reasons is obviously the advent of digital, where suddenly now everyone's a photographer. Everyone has a camera on them all the time in terms of their phone, and just the fact that digital has become a lot more accessible to photographers or to the general public means that there are a lot more photographers around. One of the sort of talking points for me is the rise of the female photographer. There are so many incredible female photographers that have entered the market sort of in the last 15-20 years that have really produced some incredible work. And the industry isn't as male dominated as it was in the 80s and in the 90s. So you know, you've got the fact that there's no barrier to entry, male or female, whereas in the past, you know, they could have been inhibiting processes that alienated some people from entering into the industry. And these days it's a lot more it's easier to enter into the industry. Another reason that there are a lot more photographers around would be the recession. You know, people have been laid off. People have been have had their jobs taken away, and may have got packages or redundancy pay, which would have allowed them to go out and buy equipment and then start their photography business. And it does seem like an industry where you can make a fair bit of money if you put your mind to it. It seems quite an attractive route to go, considering you know, in terms of the fact that, you know, if you're a steel worker, for example, in England, and I know that there's a lot of turbulence in the steel industry at the moment, you know, it's not easy to go and get a job. And if you're talented with a camera, you might have a look at trying to make some sort of money out of your photographic talents. So if you look at the challenges that face photographers, you might enter the market. You've got all your camera equipment. You've got your you know, you've got your off-camera flashes. You've got all your equipment. You've got all your gear. You've got your tripods. All of that kind of thing. What could be lacking is your technical knowledge. Now, there are so many avenues for you to go out and learn. I mean, the Photographer Academy, I've had a good look at their website, and they've got amazing videos where you could learn a whole bunch of stuff, technical and on the business side of things. You know, there are other avenues of self-help in terms of teaching. You could also go on workshops. You know, the SWPP convention in January, they have amazing photographers, very diverse speakers. So you know, the education side of things, I don't think you can complain in terms of a lack of technical knowledge. I think that anyone can educate themselves pretty inexpensively now. So that's not an excuse. We can't use that as an excuse. If we look then at the challenges that face photographers once they try and make that transition from a passion to a profit, would be the realization of time involved. You know, when we were shooting film, you basically would shoot the film on over the weekend, take it to the lab on the Monday, and you know, pretty much Wednesday go and pick everything up, and it's all been done for you. Now, with the post-production side of things, you know, you're shooting for, let's say, 10 hours, and you're doing your post-production for 40 hours or 50 hours. The client doesn't see that, and prior to entering the industry, you don't really think too much about how much time is involved. And I know some of you are sitting there going, you're probably listening to this whilst editing. That would be cool. If you're sitting listening to this whilst editing, just put that in the chat box just to get a hands up of how many of you are doing that, because that, you know, a lot of time is spent sitting behind the computer editing.
Brett,
so
the chat box just lit up. So yes, they are. It's not stopped.
Yeah.
We're at about 40 already, I think. There we go, mate.
Okay, so just to chat a little bit about that, I mean, in a couple of slides' time, I have a solution to all of that, and yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a sec. But yeah, it must have just lit up, because that's really funny. Okay, then another thing would be that it is capital intensive. You know, it's very, very expensive to go and buy your new equipment, and you feel like you never have enough gear. And whenever you do a workshop or whenever you learn something new, that photographer is telling you how they liked things and the tips and tricks that they use, and suddenly now you need a whole lot of new gear. My advice, seriously, is to rent your gear. I know of very, very successful fashion photographers and commercial photographers that don't even own a camera. And we're talking about full-time professional photographers that have been in the industry for you know, 15, 20 years, and are you know, they rent the right camera for the right job. So if you're shooting a billboard and it specifically needs to be 645, they go out and they rent their Hasselblad. Medium format, they go out and rent their Hasselblad. If they're shooting a pack shot and it's only going online, they can go and rent, you know, a Nikon 7200. If they're shooting something that's going to be with, you know, very high resolution, they'll go and rent an 8-10. So seriously, and I know that a whole lot of you might be listening right now and thinking, but I've already bought all my gear. Just stop buying gear. Use that money to educate yourself or to market yourself. And then when it gets to a point, it's exactly the same thing as buying a house. When it gets to a point where it doesn't make financial sense to rent, then buy. You know, if you're shooting every single day and you're only doing pack shots, then, you know, buy the camera that's going to work for you, and, you know, then it's going to make financial sense. But if you're only shooting, you know, once every 2 weeks, you're investing a ton of money. I mean, a Nikon D4S, you know, that's £5,000, £6,000. It costs a lot of money. There's so much marketing that you can do with that. You know, style shoots, you can use that money for so many other things. Rent equipment, and obviously it's a tax write-off. It's a business expense, so your rental is then a business expense. And just a very quick plug for the Flash Center, who's a very big supporter of the SWPP. Simon and Brian at the Flash Center are incredible. You know, and you can go and rent anything from them in South Africa. You know, there are rental houses, and in America, obviously, you guys there, you're all sorted. There's a lot of places that you can rent equipment from. It doesn't make financial sense to go and spend, you know, £10,000 on equipment and you're not bringing in the money right away. So, you know, it is, the financial implications are really debilitating. So if we move on then to your computer hardware and your computer software, obviously that is an investment that you need to make. But again, buy what you need. I don't have a massive, you know, 27-inch state-of-the-art Mac because I don't do my own editing. So I'm not going to go out and spend £2,000 on a computer when I don't need that. I've got a MacBook Air. I outsource my editing, which kind of brings me to my next slide, which again, I just need to reiterate the realization of how much time is involved. If you look at the fact that right now I'm speaking to you and I have outsourced my editing. So in terms of freeing up my time, I'm speaking to you right now instead of editing. So it frees up my time to do things that I can, you know, I can invest time into my business in a way that's going to enable me to help my business progress. If I'm sitting behind a computer editing all the time, how do I build relationships with other suppliers? How do I get out there and market myself? You know, my time is more expensive than my editor's time, and I hope she's not listening right now, but it's the truth. Her time is cheaper than my time. I'm starting now to think of my business as a business, and I think it's also because I started off shooting film that I never did my own post-production when I was shooting film. So it's not in my nature to do my post-production, and I'm not, you know, inherently creative. So for me, I don't feel that the creation part of what I do is part of the post-production process. I've always shot everything right in camera straight away. So all that's really getting done is enhancing and blemish removal. Now, for me, I can't sit behind the computer doing that. I want to be teaching workshops. I want to be out there marketing myself. I want to be out there doing style shoots, talking to other vendors and getting involved. So outsourcing your time is really, really, outsourcing your post-production for me is such a big thing. And we could be getting a little bit personal here, but so many of you are watching this webinar right now, or doing your editing, and your spouse is sitting watching TV or has gone to bed already. Okay, so let's have that in the chat room. Who is spending quality time with their spouse right now? Nobody, right? Because we're all sitting here trying to educate ourselves, trying to make this thing work. Now, if you are sitting behind the computer until 2 a.m. every single night, your marriage is going to suffer. Your relationship's going to suffer. You're going to be cranky in the morning. You're not going to be able to devote all your time to your kids, and it's really important to have that balance. You know, if you have a day job and you are looking at moving into photography as a full-time profession, get that right now. Outsource that, and also don't have an ego that tells you that you're the only person that can do the post-production on your work, because I know for a fact that my designers do a much better job with Photoshop or with Lightroom or whatever they use, because I don't really care how they get the job done, but they do a much better job than I would. So why do I have to think that I'm the best photographer, I'm the best post-production, I'm the best, you know, album designer, I'm the best? You know, I'm not. In my company, I am the photographer, and then somebody else is the specialist post-production, somebody else does the album design. So I outsource all of that specifically to free up my time to have some sort of sanity within you know within this very, very demanding and competitive industry. Okay, so another thing that photographers struggle with in the beginning of their career is developing your own unique style. Because there are so many photographers around, what happens is you go online and you start to stalk other photographers to find out what other people are doing, and I would really advise against that, because for me that is it's just a recipe for disaster. Nobody has ever, you know, been on the internet for an hour looking at other people's work and got off and going, wow, that was an uplifting experience. It's a horrible experience. Either you're looking at other people's work going, oh my gosh, that is so gorgeous, that is so beautiful, it's going to take me forever to get there, or their work is pretty average and they're getting a lot more work than me. What is wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me. You know, you leave feeling depressed, and it's a horrible experience looking at everybody else's work. I also try and stay away from wedding photographers' work, because I don't feel that I need to know what other wedding photographers are doing. I want my work to be unique in terms of the style that I am producing. So this is kind of like a long story about how I developed my own style, and then you need to take what I'm suggesting now and adapt it to your own specific situation. So what I looked at, and I think this is really important now, is first of all, the very first thing that you need to do before you decide to go into business is draw up some sort of due diligence plan. Look at who your specific target market is going to be. You know, you can't just go into it blindly. Any company that is starting does research. Now, look at your specific target market profile, and maybe it's a good exercise to do it right now. Look at your specific target market right now, and look at your target market that you would like to attract. Now, your specific target market right now, in terms of the age group and the income bracket, things like career choices and the kinds of everything that's up on the screen right now, you'll probably find that you are your own target market. Now, some of you are thinking like, okay, so what's the point? Now, the way I see this is, I am not my own target market, because I can't afford to spend the kind of money that I need to have a decent career on photography. So I am too expensive for myself. And I think that that realization that I am not my own target market was something that did take a little bit of getting used to, because it is a little bit of a blow to the ego when you kind of realize, look, maybe, I'm not the person I should be targeting. And then think about who your target market should be. And I have found that, okay, I'm a little bit older now, so my target market age group is younger than I am, but when I started, it was definitely older than when I started. So if I look at the income bracket, it's higher than mine. The career choices are obviously very different to the target market that I would like to target. I would like to target successful people in creative fields, yes, art directors, in people in advertising, maybe brand managers at companies like Procter and Gamble, Unilever, the type of clothing they wear, designer clothing, brand names, Prada, Armani, those kind of things, perfume, the types of magazines they read, the types of films they watch, the books, the TV shows, what restaurants they go to. Now, all that information is so readily available on Facebook. So you just go into a potential client's Facebook profile and they tell you absolutely everything about them. And then you can kind of see the target market that you are currently attracting. So go and look at your current clients' profiles, and you'll be surprised that a lot of them will actually be very similar people to you. Now, I'm asking you, well, you see, there's two systems that I work by, and this is going back to the food analogy here. Hot dogs or fine dining? Are you producing a product that is going to attract a target market that eats hot dogs, or are you going to try and target a target market that is more into fine dining? Now, in my own business, I actually have two models that I implement. One of them not too many people know about, and that is the hot dog market, where I am producing a product that does require high volumes to make decent money out of it. And then the other one is the fine dining, which is primarily my wedding business. So I'm looking for clients that are having that have weddings, that are spending a lot of money on their weddings and their wedding photographer and their wedding, the dress and all of that. They're spending a lot of money on that. With regards to the hot dog market, I target a target market of probably LSM sort of 6 or 7, and that's out of 10. So if you say that 1 is lower income and 10 is higher income, for my portraiture in business, I target more of a middle market target market, and I sell a lot more of those for a shorter period of time. So I'll chat about that a little bit later, but I'm going to talk about my fine dining aspect in terms of the business model that I implement here. So if you look at the target market that I was talking about, that does have more money than me and does have more disposable income than I do, it's a different type of person. It's a completely sort of alien world to a lot of us, where brand names and fragrances and all sorts of things mean a lot more, or mean different things to you, to us, or to the target market. So the types of people I'm trying to attract are the types of people that wear these clothes, they wear this type of perfume, they read Vogue magazine, they read Harper's Bazaar, Vanity Fair, and they are what they're exposed to in terms of imagery is very different to the target market that is generally your hot dog market. The types of images that they see when they go to, say, TK Maxx, the images that are up on the walls there are very different to if you go and visit a Gucci store. So different income brackets are exposed to different imagery. So I kind of looked at that, and I saw that if my specific target market constantly saw images that were a little different to the middle income group, this image is shot by a friend of mine in South Africa, Jacques Veyers, incredible fashion photographer. These are the types of images that are going to be in high-end, sort of high fashion magazines. Now, if my specific target market is looking at these magazines, then obviously they're looking for wedding photography like this, which is very different to the target market that is your middle market income group. So, you know, images like this, the lighting like this, the poses like this, I started to incorporate that into my work. I looked at the specific target market and thought about what kind of images appeal to them. I mean, this is Kate Moss's wedding, you know, shot by Mario Testino, and you know, you don't have bridesmaids jumping, showing their knickers, you know, sort of stereotypical wedding poses that only really happen with wedding photography. You know, this is beautifully stylized. There's a bed in the middle of a field. You know, like when would that ever happen? You know, but because it's Kate Moss and because it's fashion inspired, it looks right. So with me, why can't I say to my clients, right, let's get a bed into the field, and we go and we shoot images that would appeal to somebody who looks at images like this and you know, wants images like this. So what I did, here's another image from Kate Moss's wedding. So what I did was, with regards to, say, engagement sessions, I got mood boards together from fashion magazines, not from wedding sort of backgrounds, and I put together mood boards for engagement sessions, and this is from a real engagement session, and I would take the lighting, the post-production techniques, this type of thing over here, and I would incorporate that into my engagement sessions. Now, that might not appeal to everybody, but this specifically appeals to this client, and this client, you know, has a lot of disposable income. The second theme that I went with was more of a Tommy Hilfiger kind of Ralph Lauren look over here, and I then incorporated that into their engagement session. So this looks like it was meant to be a fashion shoot, and you know, it really appealed to them, and it's very stylized, and it's, you know, it's shot with flash outside, very similar to the way that a fashion shoot would be shot. It doesn't appeal to everybody, but I don't need it to appeal to everybody because this is fine dining. It's not a hot dog market that I'm targeting here. Here is really low volumes, high margin business. If I look at the hot dog market, we'll chat about that in a couple of moments. But if we look now at the third section, this is a lot more high fashion. This was again with their engagement session over here, and you know, 3 different parts of their engagement session to make one book, and that was their engagement session that took me 4 hours to shoot because it was very carefully planned. It wasn't really, you know, show up at Hyde Park with jeans and t-shirts and let's see what happens. There is a lot of premeditation that goes into it. So if you had to look a little bit more inspiration taken from Harper's Bazaar magazine, this is Florens Welsh from Florence and the Machines, and I look at something like that and I bring that fashion element into my wedding photography, and you know, those are the types of images that I'm producing. I saw this in Vogue magazine, and I then go and shoot something like that. Now, I've been accused of copying fashion concepts and fashion magazines. Yes, that's what I do. I've never denied that, and the reason I do it is because I think that a lot of the fashion work out there is absolutely amazing, and copying wedding photography isn't really that stimulating for me. We all get inspiration from somewhere, so there aren't any more unique ideas out there. So if I'm going to draw inspiration from somewhere, I'm going to draw it from a platform that my target market relates to, and that would be the fashion industry. This image over here was in Vogue magazine, and I shot that over there. This over here again, and that's my image over there. Now, whether you think that that's good or bad doesn't really matter. I don't really care that much because my client paid me and my client was happy. The Vogue photographer is not going to be upset with me because they don't really think very highly of me as a fashion photographer. It wouldn't really bother them if they saw that I did that. In fact, I think that they would probably be flattered. People have copied my work before, and I'm very happy for them to do that. It's very flattering for me. I have noticed that there are a lot of fashion shoots these days at night, which I think is amazing, and the cameras these days have allowed us to be able to shoot in low light conditions. This shot over here obviously is not mine, but I look at that and I then will go and shoot an image like that or something like this. And another thing over here where we have the ability now to shoot in low light conditions if we have the right gear. And again, back to the gear. If you're shooting with a camera, say with an entry-level SLR, and you can't shoot with high ISOs, go and rent a camera for the day. It is not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And by shooting images like this, it's going to elevate you into a target market where people are prepared to pay you 20, 30, 40% more than if you're shooting with substandard equipment. So rent equipment for the day. And this shot over here, again with low light on the left-hand side, there's a prism over there. So just to look at the type of work that you would feel would attract the right type of client. Now, this here might set you back a few months, and you might think that, oh my gosh, I've got to rebrand everything after all of this. Maybe you do have to take a couple of steps backwards to go a few steps forwards. You need to have a portfolio that is attracting the right target market. Now, that's not going to happen if you're doing jobs really cheap to get into the industry, because your clients are going to look like they don't have disposable income. They're not going to be wearing the right dress. They're not going to be at the right venue. They're not going to have the right hair and makeup, because all of that costs money. And you need to be attractive to the right target market by showing the types of clients you want to attract. Now, my own website, and I'm unashamedly telling you this, that my own website has a lot of style shoots on them specifically designed to attract the right client. Now, when I launched my new website, I did a shoot recently in Dubai, and it was obviously in the desert. Well, not obviously, because there's a city there too, but I shot some stuff in the desert. And since launching my new website not that long ago, where the opening page is a shot in the desert, I've booked 2 weddings in Dubai for the next season, and I hadn't had any prior to having put those desert shots on. I started shooting some underwater stuff probably about 6 years ago, and as soon as I put underwater images on my website, suddenly everybody wanted underwater images. Prior to that, I had been begging people, let's shoot underwater, and so many of them were like, that's a stupid idea. Until I showed people the images, then suddenly, oh yeah, let's do some underwater stuff. So you need to show what you want to sell. And I think that that's a really important aspect to things. So creating a portfolio that will attract the right market is really, really important, whether you're selling hot dogs or fine dining. Now, if you look at asking friends or family, now we've got to go back to, are your friends and family the same target market as you? Do they have the same income? Are they the same? Do they dress the same? All that kind of thing. And if they are, and you are looking at targeting a high-end fine dining client, then you need to go and approach model agencies and pay models so that you have got the right types of images to put up on your site. If you ask friends and family, you are going to be setting a precedent. So you look at your work now on your website and ask yourself, who, you keep getting the same type of clients. That's because you keep on showing the same type of work. If you want, there was an American president, and some of you Americans who are listening at the moment, if you could just write his name down, that would be cool. But there was an American president that said, if you want to achieve something that you've never achieved before, you're going to have to do something you've never done before. We can't all sit here hoping that the right client is going to come along. They're not. You're going to need to show the right client that you are the photographer for them by your brand that you're putting out there. So that's really in terms of my wedding sort of photography marketing strategy, is that I target high-end wedding clients that are very fashion conscious. So I will shoot as if I'm shooting for Vogue magazine or Harper's Bazaar. I'm not going to shoot people who don't want to be photographed. I pose a lot of my work. My work is very stylized. Obviously, I'm going to shoot work that has spontaneity and photojournalism to it, but the work that I put out on my site is very stylized. So I want to attract clients that like that. And granted, the market is a lot smaller, but there's a lot less competition at that end. If I start to look at the hot dog market for weddings, there's a lot of people in the bottom end of the market all fighting for a piece of the pie, and not that many people targeting higher end clients. And we can have a chat about that. If you've got questions or if you've got comments, we can have a chat about that in a few minutes' time. But to talk about my my hot dog aspect of what I do, and it's not really a hot dog. I would say it's more like a sit-down Nando's type of restaurant. It's not really completely hot dogs, because I target a bit more of a middle market when it comes to my family portraits, and I've got a very cool concept, and I can't tell you too much about it right now. You're going to have to come to my SWPP masterclass because I have a system where I'm literally shooting in the summer. I shoot 12 families a day over a 6-week period. That is a lot of people. There is obviously less margin in what I do, because each family gets half an hour, and it's a very high volume, lower margin model, but it works very, very well for me. I use a 70 to 200 2.8, a collapsible reflector, and that's all I take with me. So it's I don't use fancy lighting. I am giving the client the high resolution files with digital, with the wedding side of things. I don't give my client high res files. I give them printed products, because that's more of a fine dining experience. I'm not selling a buffet. I'm selling a fine dining experience. So these types of images here, these clients are not. I'm not in any way saying that they are lower income clients, because clearly they're not. But they're not. They're not the type of clients that are spending £200,000 on their wedding. It's a client that's probably looking at sort of LSM 7 or 8 in terms of their income side of things. So that's just a little bit about the family portraits that I do in the UK over the summer, and yeah, that is more of my hot dog concept as opposed to the fine dining concept. Now, just to take you back a little bit to the looking at getting images that are going to appeal to your specific target market, collaborate with other people in the industry. There are other people in the industry that are in a similar situation to you, that have the same clients over and over again and want to get out of that rut, or that sort of cycle that is happening. And you've got makeup artists, florists, dress designers, and collaborate with them to create images that are specifically designed to target a certain market. Now, when I looked through the internet and I found this image that I really like, and I wanted to create something like this I wanted to create an image that I could use for my marketing similar to this one. And I liked the floral aspect of this too. So I got in touch with a florist, I got in touch with a makeup artist, and we put together an image, a dress designer as well, and we put together an image just like that, and that's the image that I used for my advertising. I think it was last year or perhaps the year before. I had a double-page spread in Brides magazine, and this year this image here is the one I'm probably going to use. This was shot on my workshop recently, and I collaborated with Haute Couture and some incredible photographers up in York, Dominic Wright and his wonderful wife Zoe, who do styled shoots, and we got a dress from Enzoni. Florist obviously was sorted out there, hair and makeup, and the brief to them was, you create an image that you want to use for your advertising. So obviously then the florist is going to put something together that really appeals to her, because you have a situation where you're continually told what to do by your clients, that you never actually have creative freedom to do what you want to do. So when I collaborate, I let the contributors do what they want to do, because then there's more chance of me actually my cat has just told me that it's hungry. Sorry, I got distracted there. There's more chance of those people using my images then in their advertising and then getting more exposure. So that is some advice with regards to you spending your money not on camera equipment, but rather with education and putting together shoots like this, so that you can have marketing work that will attract the right client, so that you can make decent amount of money and then obviously buy the right gear. So I'm going to move on to marketing now, Jay. So if there are any questions in the chat room, please feel free to ask.
There are, mate. So perfect timing, I think, and maybe we should get through a few of them so we don't store too many up, because they're all sort of relating to everything that you've talked about so far. So they're not in any particular order, Brett, so I'll quickly run through them because we've got a few coming in already.
Sure.
So going right back to the beginning, and I think you've actually touched on the answer really, because you obviously were brave, well, not brave enough. You've showed us where you started, and obviously somebody commented that from where you were when you started to where you are today. Where would you say that the key development was? You've talked about it quite a lot. It's education, isn't it? It's training, it's learning.
Yes, it happened in about 2005, 2004, so I was already 10 years into my career. And what I realized, and I think some of you might be realizing this right now, is that I had so much work, but I wasn't actually making any money. I was shooting 50, 60 weddings a year, going just from one wedding to the next. In South Africa, we have a lot of, we call them public holidays, you call them bank holidays. And I remember one April that I shot 11 weddings in 1 month. And you can't give the client your absolute all if you are burnt out, tired. If you're shooting one wedding a week, that means you've got to be getting one wedding a week out on the other end. Otherwise, you start to, your service starts to, your service levels drop. But in about 2005, I realized, look, this is not working. I'm really busy, and it's fantastic for my self-esteem, and it's fantastic for my ego that I'm always busy, but busy does not mean successful. If you've got time off and you're having holidays, that's successful. It's not about being busy. So what I decided then was that I need to change who I'm marketing to. I know that I'm able to produce the right product for the client. And yeah, I relaunched my brand. I changed my website. I took a whole lot of images off my website. that could be some. Well, I'll talk about that in electronic media marketing. But one of the main things that we have to understand is that when you are dealing with a middle market client, and let's say that I'm middle market, I'm putting myself in that same sort of category. When you're dealing with a middle market client, we immediately equate quantity with value. So if you look at the fine dining experience, you get a tiny little starter for a lot of money. So your clients don't want to be sifting through 500 images. You know, they want 120 fantastic images. So volumes is quite a big thing that I think you need to start looking at. So I've tried as hard as I can to limit my posts when I post somebody's wedding, 10, 12 images, because I don't want to emotionally fulfill them. If you start posting 70, 80 images from a wedding, you'll never find that in the comment section people going, oh, that's amazing, I can't wait to see more. You know, if you post 10 images, people are going, wow, that's so cool, you know, can't wait for the others to come. So taking images off your site and only having 20 quality images in your gallery, I'm telling you, it does take a bit of courage, but I'm telling you, you will start attracting a better client. After seeing 5 or 6 pictures, they know if they like your work or not. So don't give them 60 or 70 images and just sort of everything just gets lost in the noise.
Brilliant, thanks for that. Okay, so you've talked a few times about rental equipment and obviously keeping the cost down and getting the kit for the job. Somebody mentioned though, obviously renting with regards to the deposits. Obviously, these facilities do require deposits, but obviously just be careful with the shoots, isn't it? And you get the money back.
Oh, of course, treat the equipment like it's your own. You know, because you know everybody else is in a similar boat, and if the person is commenting on the deposits, you would have been spending, you know, if they're saying that the deposit is a financial barrier, you would have been spending a lot more money on the actual camera, and sure. As you know, and as you say, you're going to get that money back, and also the money that you do spend on the rental equipment is, you know, it's tax deductible. It's a business expense.
We've also, which I didn't know before, we obviously did the webinar. Obviously, you outsource, you know, your editing. So, and you mentioned that you have an editor that you work with. Obviously, we know that you're based primarily in Amsterdam. What are the best ways?
It doesn't matter where you're based. It really doesn't matter where you're based.
Fair enough. Good point. Sorry. People are asking for the advice on to find an editor. Then where do they start? Where do they go to?
As I said, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, I hope you weren't offended, it really doesn't matter where you live. You can upload your images to, there's a company in the States called shoot.edit. They're amazing, quick turnaround time, good post-production. There's Purple Matrix. There are loads of companies that do it. If you are not comfortable with a company doing it, then you can find somebody who does it freelance. If you just go onto the Society's Facebook page and just ask, you know, I need somebody to edit wedding photographs, you will get lots of people who will volunteer to do that. And there are graphic designers who are leaving college these days without any work. And you know, they would be happy to do that kind of work to gain experience, and also you know, it's some people enter the industry wanting to be a photographer, and I mean, you know, graphic designers enter the industry wanting to be a photographer and realize that they don't want to deal with people, and they really enjoy sitting behind the computer. I don't enjoy sitting behind the computer. I enjoy shooting. So, you know, you'd get different personality types, and editors enjoy doing, you know, if you've got an editor who likes doing what they're doing, it's going to show in their post-production.
Great. A couple of questions came in regards to the editing. Obviously, I presume, because like I said, we do our in-house editing, so I'm not familiar with I've heard of Purple Matrix and some of the things that you've mentioned. Do they tend to charge by the image, or is it by the amount of images? What sort of people are expecting there?
They have different tiers. You know, you could get basic color correction will cost you, you know, I'm going to guess now, maybe 50 cents, American cents. It does vary on companies, and then it can go right up to like, you know, $50 if you're doing a one-off shot that requires a huge amount of post-production. But in general, and I really I'm going out on a limb here. In general, I would be happy to pay, you know, a pound, £2, £3 per image. In terms of the retouching, depending on how much is done. It's normally done per image. It's not done per hour or anything like that. They charge you per image, and there is like a scale that the more images you give them, the less you pay per image.
Brilliant. Well, you actually sort of answered this next question, but let's just recap it, because obviously you were talking about very stylized shoots. We've seen the engagement shoot you did with a couple, and you referred to, you know, the images that you sort of took from the magazines.
Yeah.
So do you recommend, and I know the answer is yes, because I'm pretty sure this is what you said, people to do this, they need to create things like this for their marketing and their portfolio. So it is a case of creating the collaborations like you've mentioned, isn't it, and pulling these things together to create.
And getting together, getting mood boards so that everybody's on the same page and they all know what they're going to get out of it. Like I said, this specific shoot that's on the screen at the moment, this was done by Dominic and Zoe Wright in terms of facilitating the styled shoot. So you have people now that facilitate styled shoots. So it's not a workshop. You will pay a contributing fee to go somewhere and shoot a styled shoot that somebody else has arranged. So they arrange. So you don't arrange anything. They arrange the model, the dress, the hair, the makeup, the florist, or whatever. And there's like 5 photographers that each pay a set fee to go and shoot, you know, on the styled shoot.
Brilliant. Let's have a look. Oh, somebody asked. I think this is one of the people joining us from South Africa. You mentioned a friend of yours who shoots fashion, but they missed the name. What was the name of your friend that shoots fashion in South Africa?
It's Jacques Weyers. That's Jacques, Jacqueus. Surname is Weyers, Weyers. Jacques Weyers.
Brilliant.
Phenomenal.
Okay, so they seem to be loving the analogy between the hot dog eater and the fine dining. What if this is a quite a good question, what if your hot dog eater wants to try fine dining?
If they can pay for it, then that's fine.
Excellent. I knew that was going. Brilliant. I like it. So we've talked about, okay, so we've talked about the stylized shoots, so a couple of these have been repeated now. Okay. I would like to know if Brett, when he shoots his weddings, does he shoot the ceremony, the guests, the reception, you know, the standard, or is it all just stylized portraits?
No. It's exactly the same as anybody else would shoot a wedding in terms of the amount of photojournalism involved. Obviously, I'm going to shoot cutting the cake, the dancing, but what I show is images. Sorry, let me say that again. The images that I use for my marketing are the standout images that are specifically stylized, because everybody knows that you're going to shoot cutting the cake. You know you're going to shoot the first dance. So I do all of that, of course, but the images that distinguish me from other photographers, that's what I'm going to use in my marketing.
Brilliant. Somebody said that Thomas Jefferson they think is the president of the America. That was your quote. So I just got up that. Okay. So this is okay. So this is quite a long question. Let's see if I can get it right. So, is it best setting out to sell straight away to your high-end target market, or should you work your way up to that market? This is so that you know you are going to be able to sell the right thing in the right way to them.
Okay. Did Gordon Ramsay start out flipping burgers at McDonald's?
No idea.
No. No. He worked his ass off in the kitchens in France when he was 19, and he actually worked 2 or 3 jobs and eventually opened his own fine dining restaurant, bang, straight off, and was full from the beginning. You have to do the hard work first, and then you can open your fine dining restaurant. You're not going to gradually work your way up from hot dogs to McDonald's to Nando's to Browns to all the way up, right up until the Savoy. It's going to take too long, because each time you change your target market, you've got to start from the beginning again. So you've got to market all over again, and that takes 2 or 3 years. So if you're gonna go up in gradual increments, it's going to take you a lot longer to get there, and it's not going to be as effective because you alienate your existing target market.
You mentioned a term earlier, and I don't know the answer. So you referred to LSM when you were talking about your target market. What does that mean?
Sorry, lifestyle measure.
Okay, excellent.
Lifestyle measure. So it's a term that they use in research, and it's basically on a scale of 1 to 10, richest being 10 and the lower income being 1. So if you say LSM 67, those are people, there's a certain they've got this type of car, this type of house, this, these type of clothes, that type of thing. So if you search the term LSM or lifestyle measure, there is a graph, or it's kind of like the indexes that they used for determining inflation and things like that.
Brilliant. Okay, so obviously people are loving the idea of collaborating to create the stylized shoots. Best advice for sort of how to pitch it to, say, a florist or a dress designer, that sort of thing.
Okay, if you are not friends with them, then you need to pay. I pay my models. I contribute to the flowers because the flowers are obviously expensive, and the florist can't be expected to foot the bill completely for, say, something like what's created in the image that's on the screen at the moment. So I pay, personally, I pay the people who are involved, and I give them images, because they, even though they're going to benefit, I want the best of the best. So if I want a specific makeup artist that I know isn't going to collaborate with me because they don't know who I am, I'm going to pay them. I'll pay them to do, and then hopefully they'll love what I do so much that the next time they'll be very happy to work with me for a reduced rate, or that's where I use the opportunity to get in with the industry, with the best makeup artists and the best florists and the best dress designers. If you can't get a dress, go and hire a dress.
Excellent. Brett, we've got a few more questions, but a lot of them are quite generic now, and I know we still have quite a bit of presentation to get through, so I'll hang on to these. Guys, cool. Stay with us. I know we've said an hour and a half. Brett isn't going anywhere because I won't let him. so we will answer all of your questions, but we've still got quite a lot to get through. So Brett, I'll hand it back to you. And like I said, a few that I've got a generic.
Sure. Okay. All right. So let's get on to marketing. So you've got the images that you've shot from your collaborations. You've done all of this. You now need to start marketing yourself to the right target market. Now, the traditional avenues of advertising would be your print marketing, your electronic media, and bridal shows and wedding shows and things like that. So I want to tell you that print is alive. Print is a very viable platform to advertise. However, you have to do it correctly. This double-page spread here is an example of what is in current advertising, and it's not in any way used as an example of people who are doing things badly. But what I want to emphasize is the fact that if you look at the page, there is a lot of noise. There's different fonts. There's a whole lot of different images, and there isn't a very distinguished brand that each photographer is portraying. Now, when you are approached by print advertising companies, when you're approached by magazines, and there is a lot of competition in the industry these days, so you will get a lot of people wanting to get hold of your money in terms of your advertising budget. Please, guys, don't take a quarter-page advert, because whatever you do no matter how good your advert is, no matter how good your image is, you're going to be categorized with every other quarter page every other quarter page advertising photographer. Now, what I do is I take all my advertising budget that I want specifically for print advertising, and I will take a full page ad. So you're looking at these kind of ads here, and some of these photographers might be better than I am, might be more successful than I am, might be charging more than I am. But if I go and put an advert like that, a full page advert, so you turn the page and the whole page is that image there with very little written on it. This is another one that I used. The previous image was probably from about 2009. Then I used this image. This one was a double page spread. And I'm putting as little information there as possible. And the reason I'm doing that is because I need a reason for people to call me. If I put all my information on the advert, then people don't really need to call me. If I put my pricing there, or if I put my 10 images, I need to put one image that is going to appeal to a very specific person. And that's also the key to advertising to higher end clients. Have one person in your mind that you're specifically targeting. Have one. It can be a celebrity, it can be somebody that you admire, and in your mind you ask yourself, if that person saw this image, would they want to book me as their photographer? Don't put a generic image out there that you think society expects you to put out there, because that's when you're going to be targeting the hot dog market again. So your print advertising, not only does it send a message to your bride, but it also sends a message out to the industry. So if you think about it, when you're looking through wedding magazines, the first page you go to, or the first section you go to, is the photographer's page. Now, why do you do that? You do that so that you can see what everybody else is doing, or see what the competition is doing. Now, if I've got a double page ad there, I've already won the battle, because you look at me and you go, whoa, who's this guy? Double page ad. I know how expensive this is. This guy must be doing well. He must be expensive. But let's just look at this objectively. It's a stylized shoot. It didn't cost me any money, and I've taken all my budget and put it into one double page ad. And already I've given you the impression that I'm successful, that I charge a lot of money, and that I dominate the industry. Now, that perception then becomes self-fulfilling. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will then go to my website to check out all the rest of my work. The rest of my work will be similar to that. Then you'll see that there's a photographers section. Oh, all right, 4 photographers. You go to the 4 photographers page, and you see that I do workshops. Now you book yourself on a workshop to come and see what the secret of my success is. And my advert has worked because I'm filling up places on my workshops through advertising in bridal magazines. So when somebody says that print advertising doesn't work, it's probably because their advert is incorrect, or they're not gauging the efficacy of the advert through how the industry feels about you, because other people will want to work with me. Other wedding planners will want to work with me if they see that I'm to be taken seriously with a full page ad that looks that looks really good. Then there's bridal fairs. I think bridal fairs are an incredible opportunity to meet clients. What you have to understand, and I think that this is imperative, is that you will find a lot of females at bridal fairs. A lot of the times, mum will go with her daughter on a reconnaissance mission to go and find suppliers, and this is a real photograph taken from a bridal fair that I was exhibiting at. And you'll find that mum will come there and sit down with her daughter, and the daughter will go, "Oh wow, mum, this is amazing." And the mum will say, "Oh, what are you looking at there, sweetheart?" And I'll say to the mum, "No, mum, hold on a sec. You need to look at this," because what I've done is I've got an album that I have specifically designed for the fashion-conscious client. So I've got images like this in my portfolio album sitting on the sofa there that the client I'm looking for will like. So that type of image there, those type of images that are going to appeal to the fashion conscious. If the mother sees this, she's not going to like that, or some of them might, but in general, mom's not really going to like that. Mom's going to be sitting there looking at the work going, okay, so, you know, is that really a wedding photograph? So I say to mom, hold on, mom, here is an album. You take a look at this while your daughter takes a look at that. Now, while the daughter's looking at the one thing, the mum is looking at this. And mom's going to see images like this, and she's going to then tell her daughter, yes, these images are amazing. Her daughter's going to be going, wow, mom, these images are so cool. And they're both saying the same thing about two different things. And therefore, they're validating why I should be the photographer. This lady over here, she came to chat with me about her daughter's wedding. And obviously, I'm going to show her the album that is going to appeal to the mum, and then she goes home and she tells her daughter via Skype or email or whatever that she's found this really good photographer and he's such a nice guy. Have a look at his work. Now on my website, that's where I'm going to put the images that are more appealing to the fashion conscious person, because the daughter is going to be doing the research online. It's not the mum that's going to be doing the research online. And again, we've chatted about the website side of things as well. You know, have your work specifically designed to attract the right client, so that when they do go to the website, it is specifically looking at that target market that you really want to work with. So if you look at the industry, targeting the industry, if you've been shooting for a little while, you will have come into contact with other, with florists and with makeup artists and that type of thing. That's where you need to market yourself as much as possible, because the industry is going to be around a lot longer than the bride is. The industry's been around for a very long time, and the bride enters the market, she finds who she needs as her vendors, and then she leaves the market. The industry is going to be around a long time. I've been working with the same makeup artist for 20 years in Durban, and you know, in terms of the people that have been around in the industry for a long time, we've kind of grown up in the industry together. So what you will find is that a florist will or decor person will come in and just before they're ready to go, they'll whip out their phone or their point and shoot camera and take an image of their handiwork. Now, when I saw this happening, and I saw it twice, when I saw this happening, I specifically asked the lady if she would send me the image that she shot of these flowers, and that's what she sent me. And I mean, I think it's really cute. There's the finger on the top left-hand corner. It's direct flash. It's not a great photograph. I'm not going to laugh at her photograph because I can't do flowers like she can, but you know, it's not a great image. Now, she has that type of work in her portfolio that she's trying to sell her work. If I send her something like that, she's going to, you know, be a lot happier, and there's a lot more chances she's going to recommend me, you know, as a photographer to her clients than if I didn't send her those images. Here we have a collage that I put together for her. Makeup artist as well. Makeup artist, beautiful makeup. She takes the photograph, that's what she shot. And that's what's going to be in her portfolio, unless I give her something like that. And I shoot images specifically for suppliers so that the suppliers have images that they can use. And then they will recommend me, even if I'm not a great photographer. They're going to recommend me because I'm giving them images. So when it comes to sharing your images with other suppliers, share as many images as you can. They will start using them in their advertising, and they'll give you a photo credit. If they don't, then don't give them images the next time. I know that there are going to be a lot of comments about people stealing your images and just using them randomly. Then you don't recommend those people as suppliers, and you don't work with them again. I'm not saying you refuse to work with them. I'm just saying that when the opportunity comes along for somebody that says to you, you know, do you recommend a florist? You say yes, and you recommend the florist that recommends you. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to recommend somebody who is the best florist, you're going to recommend somebody that you like working with. Facebook covers, huge opportunity. This DJ in Durban, David Yap, I will go and specifically shoot him speaking. I'll specifically shoot him working the decks, young people dancing, old people dancing, the first dance, and I will make a cover for him. I'll take his logo off the internet and make a Facebook cover for him, and you'll find that he has to use that as his cover photo on Facebook. And some of the people that I've given images to have had that their cover photo for 2 years on online on the Facebook page, obviously just giving me a little bit more airtime. I also do it with venues. I'll make a venue card. It's a 6x8 card that is printed on really nice paper. Maybe 100 I'll drop off, and they then tend to put that into the pack that they will then give to potential brides, and my work will go out there as well. If I've shot 3 or 4 weddings at a specific venue, I will then go and make an album for that venue of work that I've shot at that venue. Now, if you look at the family market, family portraits, you could. There's so many opportunities that you could go to. And I know this sounds a little bit ridiculous, but there's hospitals and perinatal clinics. I think it's the NCT, the NCT classes that they have in the UK. If you can get hold of NCT groups, they're like 10 or 12 mums that have babies all at the same time. When I say all at the same time, I mean within a few weeks of each other, and they stick together, having tea parties at their houses. Now, if you get in with one of those groups, you could end up shooting, maybe every 6 months or every 3 months, shoot the whole group, and by then it'll start to become viral. So approach hospitals, look outside of the traditional ways of thinking how you're going to attract a certain target market. There was a clinic in Durban that I started shooting for right at the beginning of my career. I approached them and I said to them, how long are your postnatal classes? And the lady there, Doreen, she said to me that their postnatal classes last a year. So I said, well, as a gift to your people that are now the kids that are moving from babies to becoming toddlers, they can come to me for a free mini session, and they get a 6x8 for that. And if they want to, they can buy more prints. I would shoot. I think I shot maybe like 1,600 of these in sort of 12 years. That she's unfortunately retired now, but I was still doing those free shoots, those free mini sessions, and clearing maybe 80 or 120 pounds a time. And if you do them all in one day, you could end up shooting, I mean, not 1,600 in one day, but if you're getting all these inquiries, you could structure your diary that on Thursdays I shoot graduations. I used to call them graduations because they're kids graduating from being a baby to being a toddler. Now that's the way in for me into the market, and that's how people started to learn about me in the market where people who were having babies, that's how I got into the family market. And that just then obviously, you get this whole viral effect going on there. So after all of that, and we're on a little bit of a high at the moment because I find that very exciting, chatting about the industry and talking about the marketing side of things, we're going to get down to things like costings. Now, I do understand that costing is a major thorn in a lot of people's sides, but I'm going to go through a few slides here for you. And this slide over here is the average cost of a UK wedding from 2006 to 2012. Now, from 2012 to now, it's pretty much the same. In fact, it might have even dropped a little. And the reason you can see that spike in 2010 is because in the UK, a lot of people have long engagements, maybe 2-year engagements. So they got engaged when there was the peak at 2008, and they got engaged and spent bucket loads of money, and then obviously the crash happened, but they were already engaged, so they'd already confirmed with most of their vendors, so they had to go through with it. You'll see that people that got engaged in 2009 and getting married in 2011, they were a little bit more frugal with their spending. Now, what does this mean to us? Obviously, it means that there's less money around in terms of how much people are spending. And when you look at the average cost of a wedding, the relevance to that is the average spend on a photographer is 10%. So you're looking at a 1,500 spend on average. Now, for some of you, you wouldn't do anything less than, say, $2,000. For some of you, 1,500 is like your ultimate dream goal. Now, if I just wanted to put a few things into perspective for you, and this is not really an uplifting experience, so I'm sorry if this hurts a little bit, but let's look at the average cost of how much it actually costs you to produce an album for a client. Now, if we take your advertising budget over a year, let's just say £3,600. Now just hear me out here. Some of these figures might be a little over what you're spending at the moment. Some may be a little bit kind in terms of what the numbers that we've got there. So if you look at training and education, 600 a year, and we're talking about buying online courses. We're talking about SWPP membership fees, going to the convention, spending money on training and education, could work out to about 600 a year, which works out to about £50 a month. Your computer hardware or software, let's take a figure of £6,000 over 5 years. If this is very similar to the States if you just turn it into dollars, and in South Africa just add a couple of zeros. Let's have a look at computer hardware or software. 5 years, about £100 a month. Your camera gear, if you spent it, £10,000 spending on camera gear, I'm talking about nice lenses and a couple of bodies and your backup body and all that kind of thing, could work out to about £300 a month. Your office, blah, 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 insurance, and I would include the car in this insurance. You're probably looking at about £150 a month. Okay, so what does that all mean? If you look at how much it costs for each wedding, now when I say each wedding, we're looking, this exercise was done assuming that you shoot 3 weddings a month over a year. So it's 36 weddings a year, which I think is a nice number. You have one weekend off, a weekend, and you're not too busy that you don't have time to stop and sharpen your axe. So if you look at costing each wedding, let's just say you're giving them an album, you're giving them a good quality album for £300. Your assistant, your second shooter, is going to cost you £100. Your telephone, your office rental and all of that, £100. This is per wedding. Your advertising, you spent £3,600 for the year. Each wedding cost you to buy £100. Your computer hardware, software, $300. Your camera gear, whether you're renting or buying, per wedding would cost you around $100. Travel insurance, $50, and wear and tear on the vehicle, probably $50 as well. So your total cost of how much it actually costs you to put that album in front of your client is going to cost you around £830. Now let's say we are charging $1,500, which is the average spend that clients are spending if you look at that graph that I showed you a little earlier. If we look at that, and we can also use this figure in South Africa to say that it's 15,000 Rand. So let's just say you're charging 15,000 Rand. In the States, $1,500, in the UK, £1,500. If you are charging £1,500, your total cost of sales is $830. Your pre-tax profit will be $670. Your after-tax take-home pay will be £435.50. Now that is not a pretty picture, and I'm sorry about that if it's hurt you, but what we've got to do now is make something. Look at another part that's going to be even more depressing. How much time are you spending on each wedding? Your pre-wedding consultation, your emails back and forth, meetings, all that kind of thing, an hour. maybe you're going for a site inspection, 3 hours. The actual wedding is the fun bit, and probably, you know, it takes less time. You know, you've got 10 hours. The post-production, if you're doing it properly, and this is also something that is affecting the industry at the moment, a lot of photographers are producing fine dining products with hot dog prices. So they will spend a lot of time in post-production in making sure that they get the best albums out, but then they don't have the confidence to charge fine dining prices. They're charging hot dog prices. Now, obviously, these figures, some people spend more time, some people spend less time. If you look at the post-production, here I've said 56 hours. Some people will say, I can get a wedding knocked out in 4 hours. That's cool. I can make a hot dog in 5 minutes. I'm not saying that you have to take 56 hours. Some people take more, some people take less. But if you had to look at that, in total you're spending 70 hours on a wedding that has made you £435.50, which brings us to a very horrible slide of £6.21 an hour, or £10,000 a month, or £12,870 a year. That is less than minimum wage, and that's really, really depressing. So you're going to have to change something. You're going to have to either change how much you charge, or you're going to have to reduce your costs somewhere else. Now, selling hot dogs is not a problem. If you can sell a lot of hot dogs in a short amount of time with less margin, fantastic. You know, I'm not saying that everybody should target the higher end of the spectrum, but what I'm saying is, please, guys, don't produce a fine dining product for a hot dog price, because, you know, £6.21, with respect to the people that work at Starbucks, you might as well go and pour coffee at Starbucks. At £6.21 an hour, you're making less money than your second shooter is making. So with that with that slightly depressing note, that's pretty much the end of my presentation and what I've got to chat to you about here. I'm happy to stick around for as long as you need, Jay, in terms of the questions. Just, you know, in terms of what I do, you know, I've got some books out, I've got some DVDs out, I have a couple of workshops coming up, and I'd love to chat to you a little bit longer now in terms of your questions, and some interactive discussion, I think, is also quite nice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and loads of thanks already. I'm going to read you some comments in a second, but we will get the questions done, because we've got a few, but not loads. You've answered quite a lot as we've gone, which I thought you would, which has been brilliant.
Thanks,
so, okay, so again, in no particular order, Brett. So I'll just go down the list that we've got. You mentioned, you talked about wedding fairs.
Yes.
I have a comment here. I've been doing a few wedding expos, and my stand and my images, I feel, look fantastic, but I'm not getting any bookings from them. So your advice there, is it the wrong venue? Is it the wrong fair? What are your initial thoughts?
It could be a combination. One of the things that I find that photographers tend to do is, because the space available to them is quite limited and expensive, they tend to put too many images up on the back because they want to utilize that space as much as possible. So they'll end up putting, you know, 15 images behind them. They'll have 3 or 4 albums on the stand, and it just adds to the noise. I have one big image behind me and one album that's on the table or on the coffee table where I can sit down with my clients, and obviously the one album, the hidden album that is there specifically for the mum, that I've got under the table that I utilize for that. But I would say less is more in terms of getting your right brand out there. And again, yeah, it could be in the wrong area, it could be in the wrong demographic, but the common mistake that many photographers make is putting up too many images and having too much information on their stand.
Brilliant. Okay, so talking about your weddings, Brett, and obviously you mentioned second shooter there. We've had somebody ask what your sort of wedding team consists of. Is it yourself and a second shooter? Do you have many assistants? How does it work?
I have myself and an assistant. I don't have a second shooter. I shoot all my own work. My assistant carries my bags and sets up lighting. In terms of the assistant side of things, so many people think you need somebody who understands photography to be your assistant. You don't really. It's just a Sherpa. You need somebody who can carry the bags, look the part in terms of the brand association, and can follow instructions with regards to setting up lights. You can go and get a good student and pay them, £7 an hour or £8 an hour to do something for you in terms of carrying your bags. Doesn't have to be somebody who's interested in photography.
I agree. I think some of the best assistants we've ever had in our studio actually have just been employed as assistants and actually didn't have any interest in photography. They were just taught how to where to put the camera, what to look for, and they have been brilliant at that.
And just to reiterate that point, if a client is paying a lot of money, they want me to be taking the photographs. If I'm paying Armani to make me a suit, I want Armani to make me the suit, and I know that that's a ridiculous concept, because I know you can go and buy an Armani suit, but if I wanted a tailored suit from a specific designer, I want that designer to, I would, in terms of the photography, this clothing thing has got me distracted because it's not the right analogy, but the client doesn't, if the client is paying me so much, a lot of money to photograph their wedding, I don't want to risk it with having a second shooter. This second shooter thing has only really happened since digital. Prior to when we were shooting film, we never had second shooters. It's almost now a backup plan. It makes you feel better that you've got a second shooter, because in the past we could get everything done in terms of shooting the groom, the bride, the venue, all of that. Why do we need second shooters now?
Well, that's a fair point. I mean, we work with a husband and wife couple who actually have just been doing it for years. But in my opinion, they are sold as a team. They are, but they market themselves as a team. And one of them specialises in documentary. One of them specialises in the classical. But as you said, you do it yourself. Mark here at our studio shoots both. So it's it really does come down to what you're looking for on that. I've got quite a few questions coming in from people joining us from South Africa, Brett, which is really interesting. So straight off the bat with this one, I know obviously you're not there as much as you used to be. Any advice with the stylized shoots from your experience in South Africa, where to look and who to approach? Are there people already doing these sort of shoot setups that you're aware of?
Yes, there are. I know that there's a good friend of mine, Zavion, and if anybody wants any more information, please guys just drop me messages on Facebook or email me. Zavion Kotza is doing a lot of style shoots up in Pretoria. In Cape Town there are a lot of people doing them there. If you want more information with regards to specifics, I'm very happy for you to drop me a mail and we can chat about that. And an idea has just popped into my head with regards to starting a business like that, because I think that there's a big opportunity for that. So maybe I shouldn't tell everyone to go somewhere else, and I'll start up my own stylized shoots.
Watch Brett's space. Absolutely.
Watch the space.
Excellent.
It's a good business opportunity. I mean, if there are photographers out there now that want to do styled shoots, get 4 or 5 other photographers that you are not threatened by, and share the costs, dilute the costs. 2 years ago, there was a group of us from my workshop that went over to Paris for the day, and we shot the whole day in Paris. There was about 6 of us. It cost us £200 per person. That included the models, the florists, and the train ticket. And it's not a workshop. It's everyone's just shooting together. Everyone's just hanging out together shooting. So nobody's telling you what to do. You can do whatever you like, which kind of, some people would like to be told what to do, but that's when you go on a workshop. In terms of that, it's really just getting out there and actually doing something about it. It's not so difficult to put a shoot together.
Agreed. Absolutely brilliant. Great idea. All right, well, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you miss the photojournalism?
I miss my friends. When I was a policeman, there would be sort of 8 or 10 of us in a vehicle together, and I'd constantly be surrounded by friends. Um, as a photographer, it is a little bit more lonely because I am running my own business. It's all fantastic to say you are your own boss, but being the boss sometimes does suck a little. Because obviously you reap the rewards, but you also carry the risks, and it's not all fun and games all the time. When you work for yourself, you do sacrifice family time, and when you are not working, you're not getting paid. I don't miss the adrenaline rush with regards to the photojournalism side of things, because I think at my age now, 44, I have realized that I am mortal. When I was 19, running around the townships, there is a degree of immortality in terms of thinking that this is all surreal. But if I look at it now, it was pretty dangerous, and I wouldn't want to do that again. Although it was an incredible experience, and it taught me how to shoot. So it's kind of like hitting your head against a brick wall. It's really fun when it stops.
I'm
You
just on a sort of similar note. I'm a massive lover of photojournalism, and I'd never think I'd have the guts to do it. But I've read a lot of
Yeah,
books and I've seen a lot of films, and you're absolutely right that the things these guys go through is so
yeah,
dangerous now, and a lot of these people have lost their lives. I know they're
yeah,
reporting what they see, and I believe that there is an element of adrenaline junkies, but I also believe that the people are trying to, from what I've read and understood, that they're trying to get the message out, but it's such a dangerous situation.
it is, and that you can't have a family with it, it's unless you're right on the top of your game. The financial reward is not worth the risk. It's
No,
just it's yeah.
I
And
agree.
I mean, I'm very grateful that there are people out there doing it, but I'm also grateful it's not me right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely it's a different mindset altogether, but equally
Yeah,
as important. But yeah, incredibly dangerous. Um,
yeah.
okay, so this is a little bit of a longer one, and again, it's a little bit
Okay.
more of advice, really. Obviously, you've touched on the fact that a lot of photographers now giving away the images on disk or on USB, cutting the prices. Is it a case of
Yeah.
just being strong to your beliefs? How do you do things differently? How do you get to stick by, the higher end, only charging for the print material in your weddings?
Yeah. Well, again, let's go back to hot dogs versus fine dining. Even though that there's a recession, and even though you've got the Great British Bake Off and MasterChef and all sorts of cookery programs that have come up, there is still a market for fine dining restaurants. Gordon Ramsay's restaurants are full. Jamie Oliver's high-end stuff is 15 is full. Claridge's, the Savoy, there will always be people that want quality products and are prepared to pay for it. Um, I have no issues with people giving away digital files at the lower end of the market, um, as long as they don't complain about things like, oh, somebody was using my images on their website without my permission. Then my first question is, how did they get the file? And then they say, well, I gave the bride her USB disk. It's like, well, if you're going to give the bride her USB, full of images, you've relinquished control, and you can shout and scream and do whatever you like, but you're not going to win. You, the bride is going to think that you're being ridiculous because you've given those images to her, and she kind of thinks, well, I've paid for these images, they're my images, I can do what I like with them, and if my friend wants to put them on their website, then so be it. You're going to waste a lot of energy doing that. So my first question when I see people complaining about that on forums is, how did they get the files? So if you're selling hot dogs, you can't be upset with what your client does with the hot dog. You know, if you're selling fine dining, you're a lot more in control of what happens to the images. You know, if you're selling printed products, that's not to say I don't give digital files. In my largest super duper pricing option, I have unlimited reprints, and I have you know, you get parents' albums, you get bridesmaids' albums, you get groomsmen's albums, and then you get your digital files. And I also say you get unlimited reprints. So in terms of that, I have been paid enough. I'm happy. I don't care what they do with those images now, because I've been paid enough. If you haven't been paid enough and you give the digital files and then you complain, you've only got one person to blame, and that's yourself.
Yeah, well, we don't sell our digital files in any of our packages. They can ask them for us, and the price for them is it's not obscene. It's a lot of money, and like you said, if they're prepared to pay it, then we're happy with that, because it's more than
of course
we'd ever expect.
Because everything's got its price, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. This was an interesting question, and a couple came through similar, because we've looked at, well, you showed us sort of the stylized engagement shoot that you did, and then obviously you showed the sort of stylized marketing material that you put together. So obviously on a wedding day, you've sold the couple the idea of this, you know, these sort of shoots. How realistic is, how much stylized photography is done on a real wedding with you, Brett? You know, because of obviously the time constraints of you know.
No. Yeah, but the time constraints, you have to understand that if you're dealing with a client that wants those type of images, then you have a meeting with them prior to the wedding, and you say, okay, we're allocating an hour and a half for this. Now, I know that there are going to be a lot of people that go, oh yes, they allocate that time, but we never get it. If they are paying you a lot of money, then they respect you more and they listen to what you want them to do. If you're doing it for free and you say, oh, I need an hour for this, they go, yeah, whatever. If you are being paid a lot of money and you say, I need an hour here and I need, you know, an hour and a half there, the day is planned around the photographer, because one of their priorities is the photography. So it works. The psychology behind it all is fascinating, because if they see, let's just say the Kate Moss shot, there's a bed in a field. If they want that shot, you say to them, make sure that the bed is in the field at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's when the light's best and that's when we're going to shoot it. And that is what happens.
Yep, with you. Brilliant. Yep. There's a couple of nice emails, messages that I've kept here. They came in as we were going, but I just wanted to. So while you've been chatting, Brett, I have already emailed a wedding singer I know and a florist on the corner. So it was worth listening just for that advice alone. So
that's very brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett, for this webinar. I am now deleting the excess images off my website and only showing what needs to be seen. So already acting on your advice, mate, which is great. Okay, you mentioned quite early on about Facebook. So this is quite a good question, and we're big on it here at the Photography Academy. How important now is social media marketing?
Well, it's obviously it's huge, and it really is very important. But I do believe that, again, going back to emotional fulfillment, you can't put a whole blog of 80 images up on your Facebook page, because your client is going to be emotionally fulfilled, and by the time the album comes, the excitement would have dwindled, and they've seen the images already, and it's like, yeah, okay, you know, they are not as excited about it as you would like them to be. With regards to advertising, with paid ads and things like that, you know, I'm not saying that I can see the future, but anything for free is going to hook you in, and at some stage down the line, that relationship is going to change. So right in the beginning, when Facebook was for free, I don't understand why people are upset with Facebook now when they're starting to charge for advertising, because you're not entitled to having your post seen. This is a free service that they're offering. So now obviously they've hooked us with this drug, which is an incredible drug. I'm constantly being told by my wife that I'm on Facebook too often, and she's right. But I know that feeling where you just have to know what's going on, and I don't want to miss a thing. And they have got us addicted to this drug called social media, and now the dealer is starting to ask us to pay. Your first hit is free, and then down the line you become an addict, and you starting to have to pay. And I don't think that having to pay for people to see your posts is a shock. I don't think that we should all have seen this coming. So that's why I rely heavily on my network with my referral base from other vendors or other suppliers in the industry. It's quite funny when you say suppliers in the States, it means your drug dealer. When you say vendor, people in the UK don't really know what that means, or in South Africa they don't know what they mean. In South Africa we say suppliers, but in America that means something different. Just like the money shot means something different. If you look at your strategy towards other people in the industry, I'm still getting so many requests that have come from wedding coordinators, from wedding venues, from makeup artists, from florists. So I still 100% rely on that network that I've created within the industry. Obviously, social media does have its part, and it's just become part of our budget where we need to allocate funds to social media to pay for the advertising that we need to.
On that note, I'm in charge of the social media for the Photography Academy. So in the next month, we've just been working with a social media advertising marketing expert, and we've just created a new series of film with some of our members on how to make social media, specifically Facebook, work for photographers. And as you said, nothing is free anymore. But I've learned so much, and we're going to be sharing this to our members now in December on the Photography Academy. So it's definitely worth looking out for that series of films. It's going to be called Facebook for Photographers.
Okay.
I learned so much that I've employed to the Photography Academy just to advertise us, but it's all based around portrait and wedding photographers, we called it the social media experiment. And we've seen some tremendous results from very little cost, if you like, but yes. The targeting, as you mentioned, on Facebook now is so precise that it is so worth understanding and learning. So next month, look out for that, guys, and I'm sure Brett will now. But Facebook for Photographers on the Photography Academy starting in it's in December. It launches in December or the end of November. It's very soon. We're just finishing that series off, and we followed 8 photographers along with this guru for it's been a 2-month period, and the results in the 2 months on Facebook are incredible, and the stuff that I've implemented for the Photography Academy has been worth every single penny, and we've spent very, very little. I think I've spent less than £100, and the return has been phenomenal. So definitely look after that. But it's a changing game. Brett is absolutely right, and it's nothing's for free anymore on that. Another question from actually, Brett, I've got to mention this in case we lose them. I think it possibly could be a friend of yours. Well, I'm going to ask you this question because it would only come from a friend. How do you make your hair look so pretty? And I'll say that his first name is Wayne, if that helps him anything.
That's Wayne Picker from Canada.
Certainly is. He's right though. Your hair is very pretty in the photograph on the screen at the moment.
And good luck for the final next weekend. Obviously, the same over the weekend.
I've lost you a little bit there, Brett. Sorry, you just broke up.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying to Wayne, good luck for the final on Saturday. The Aussies beat us in the Rugby World Cup over the weekend, so yeah, good luck, Wayne.
So a question coming in from another one of our joint listeners from South Africa. I have established myself as quite a high-end photographer in Johannesburg, but I'm finding it really difficult to break through to the Western Cape. I seem to be having lower pricing bracket overall. Do you go about adjusting to the newer market, or should I just stand strong and and fight for it, basically.
Okay, never adjust your price, just adjust your product. So, that's advice to anyone in the industry who's battling to get the right amount of money out of your clients for what you need for your lifestyle. Don't adjust your price, adjust your product. Now, there must be a lot of people in the Western Cape listening in at the moment, and please understand that this is not an anti-Western Cape statement, but there are a lot of talented photographers in the Western Cape that are selling fine dining experiences at hot dog prices. So the market is dilute. What's the word I'm looking for, Jay? Saturated.
Yeah.
Saturated. Yeah. The market is very saturated. I shoot weddings in the Western Cape, and I get the prices that I ask for. But I'm happy. I shoot all over the world, so I need sort of 15, 20 weddings all over the world. So maybe what a good idea for that photographer to do would be to go to London and go to some of the bridal fairs in London and to target the clients that are getting married abroad. 40% of English people get married abroad. That statistic was very strange to me when I first heard it, but because there's so many long engagements, they can't get the venues that they want. A lot of people go and get married in Spain and Italy because it's cheaper, and a lot of people get married in South Africa as well, or Mauritius. If you go to a bridal fair in London, say for example Brides, which is happening in March next year, if you go there and establish yourself as a destination photographer who specifically works in South Africa, you could get international clients that are going to get married in the Cape, and you could then target the clients without having to go through sort of the middleman side of things. Go straight to the source of where the client is coming from. But the Western Cape is saturated with a lot of very talented photographers, and because of that, there's a bit of a price war going on over there.
Brilliant. We're getting to the last few now, Brett, so we're getting there. So thanks everybody for staying with us, and we do want to answer all of your questions. So what lighting equipment do you use on a wedding, Brett?
I shoot with Elinchrom with the Ranger RX. That's the big one, the 1,200 watts of flash output. If I'm doing a destination wedding where I can't hire equipment when I get to the other side, then I will take my Elinchrom EL 400s. That's the off-camera flash, the Ranger. It's called a Quadra. It's a 400 flash output. That's in terms of the lighting. I use the Lowell GL1.
Do you do any video in part of your packages, or are you just purely photography?
No, just purely photography. With respect to the videographers, video is so much work for not enough money. It's hard enough just being the photographer, not having to think about the video side of things. But it could be a situation where that is what distinguishes you. And if that's your thing and that distinguishes you from other photographers, then cool, go for it. But you've got to be paid. You've got to be paid accordingly.
We're almost there, mate, to be honest. But obviously, do want to quickly chat about the convention. I'm just making sure I haven't missed anything. Oh, going back to the social media. Well, I could have answered this. Do you have a personal Facebook or a business Facebook? It's business all the way, isn't it? You have to have a personal one to have your business one. But
yes, exactly. I am my brand. So when it comes to the personal page or the business page, obviously I will then post if it's very specifically business, I will do it only on the business page. But what I do as well is I post stuff on my personal page that is going to enhance my brand. It's going to be brand representative. So if I put stuff up on my page like I've gone on a skiing holiday in Austria, or I'm now in Cannes, I will do stuff that will be aspirational and make sure that it is in keeping with my brand. I'm not going to show you pictures of me eating at McDonald's, because my clients will see all of my posts, because I make friends with my clients. My clients will see my posts, and I want my clients to think that I am like them and I fit in with them. So my stuff on my page is very carefully orchestrated and calculating.
Brilliant. I think we're there, apart from we're quickly going to discuss what you've got going on at the convention. But somebody actually, John has said that he's looking forward and he's going to be seeing you next month in South Africa. So I guess you're doing something else in South Africa next month, so he's looking forward to seeing you. So, loads of thanks for coming through on the chat panel. It lit up, mate, anyway. So thanking you for your time and everything. And as of anything, to find out what we've got going on, the best place to interact with us is Facebook, facebook.com/The Photography Academy. That's where you can find everything that we've got going on, all the links for Brett that we've talked about tonight and the Society's convention. Brett, thank you for your time tonight. It was a bit epic, but loads of people stayed with us and thanking us for our time. So Brett, again, final time, thank you for tonight. Good night, and thanks for everyone for joining us.